Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Carnival Row Season 2, Episode 9. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we are dealing in the aftermath of all the reveals that New Dawn has been the one kind of setting, the Sparrows is working alongside New Dawn. This has all been their plan, Leonora's plan. And so now she's trying to convince Vignette to join her side, which is always so interesting because, yes, Vignette's always kind of chosen the opposite side than Philo. They constantly find themselves in that. They are Romeo and Juliet personified, constantly being torn apart and torn away from each other because of their differences of how they want to approach things. And in Vignette's case, she had her reservations about joining them because she knows who New Dawn is because of all the murder that they've done. She even brings up Dahlia and her right-hand guy. It's like, yeah, it was a Fae that murdered other Fae, but it's like, yeah, but they were weak-minded, they were traitors, because Lenora will kill anyone that doesn't side alongside that vision that she has of kind of like a unity of sorts. And we'll get that unity even if it costs us bloodshed, because Dahlia would have never gone down this path of kind of what New Dawn wanted. She would have never bit that, Also, Dahlia's kind of been shown the type of person who doesn't she enjoyed the power she had, and she doesn't like anyone questioning that, going against that. We saw that when she said, oh, you step outside of lines again, Vignette, you're going to get winged, so. And it is enough to convince Vignette this, because it's right, was it Federa? Or I'm probably butchering the name, but she's the Pix that's with Kane all the time, that's part of the Black Raven. She's like, I don't like you, Vignette, but I know that my feelings don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things. I will fight alongside you even if I don't like you, because this isn't just about us. This is about everyone. This is a future, a better life for us all to live. Yes, it might get bloody along the way, and we might even be sacrificing our lives for it, but at the end of the day, we're trying to build a better world for the people we care about. But now that's where later on you have Gray is having this interesting back and forth with Vignette. Once again, these storylines that have been somewhat connected but disconnected, because obviously Philo and Vignette have their connections to the Sprunrose household, because obviously their father was associated with Philo's birth, and Afisa knows that. But then also Vignette served in that family, early season 1. So for it to come full circle in some regards, because Vignette doesn't know about Agreus doesn't know about Vignette, just because of the connections and stuff. So it is funny how they found their way to each other. But Agreus was talking about, yes, he's coming from it's a situation where you understand the revolution side of things, but you also understand some aspects. I don't agree with everything that Agreus says, but I agree with some of the things that he's saying, that time is a slow changing thing, because the fact of the matter is, going about things the way New Dawn wants to, you're going to burn the entire world. Rather than trying to change things for the better, let's burn it all to the ground and kind of start over. But it's nothing can be built on a foundation of ash. And it's yes, but, for Vignette, it's can this world, this change, will I be alive to see it? Will my children, my grandchildren be alive to see it? And Agreus can't answer that, because no one knows. Change isn't an immediate thing. It is a slow process, And it's hard to sway someone when it's right, there's so much suffering and death going on now. We need a solution now. That ends up being such a massive part of this argument back and forth of that's the thing of everyone's trying to do the right thing, and in some regards they all have the best of intentions. It's just about how you get there and the end result, where you keep things to status quo and try to change things, when in fact you never know if things will ever change. And even if they do, I could have, especially in Vignette's mind, it's I could stop things here and now. We could start a new beginning here and now, and that my grandchildren will be able to prosper in that. But if we go down your route, let things stay status quo and let them try and change over time, God knows how long. It could be hundreds of years down the road before we actually see any change, So, and just kind of like Tourmaline was afraid was going to happen. It happened where Vignette ends up going off and joining some other calls. And it's like, right, you're leaving me behind yet again. But she's like, no, everything I'm doing is for you. It's for everyone. But for Vignette's like, for Tourmaline, it's like, I've seen what the New Dawn's going to bring. It's nothing but death and destruction and fire. There is no like happy ending going down the route that the New Dawn is. Like, this is what she believes that Vignette is mistaken in her regard, because it's like you can't like trust what they're trying to make, because once again it is something built on the yes, there's pain, there is suffering, there has been death, but you act like the New Dawn's route won't, like who's to say how, like it's going to be a situation where if you can get the result you want, sure, maybe, but there's no guarantee. And even then, it's like there's going to be so much death and destruction on the way. Like, you're just probably going to end up seeing things spiral. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's such a complicated thing, because I see the revolution side of things and I agree with that, but it is just the bloody nature of like, if you don't agree with this, you're dead. You know, it is about changing minds, because changing minds can have a lot longer effect, because the fact is, the New Dawn's approach is going to lead to just more hatred and blood and death. If like, oh, you don't side with us, then you die. And there's going to be other people stepping up trying to stop that revolution with their own revolution. It's just going to continue this cycle of blood and death. They act like they're going to be the end all be all. They're the ones proclaiming they're looking for peace. But, you know, it's like peace was never what they were looking for. They're like, oh, we're not here for domination. They are, in fact, here for domination. It's our way or the highway. Once again, the sentiment you can understand and support, but it's just not the end result and the byproduct of what you're doing. I think it's like everyone wants such an immediate solution, which I understand why you would, but I think no one's really thinking the long-term consequences. And they're thinking like, right, we're going to rip the Band-Aid off, we're going to slit throats, kill everyone, cause a lot of damage and mayhem, but the end result is going to be kind of almost utopia-like. But who's to say that's going to be the case, you know? Especially with what Tourmaline went through this episode when she kind of got trapped in that mirror and Samani came to her and was like, right, our journey doesn't end with life. That basically, and yours is just beginning. So kind of even mean like in the gloaming, as they call it, like the afterlife. It's like, she was told, Tourmaline was like telling Vignette, what choices we make affect us in the gloaming. And for her, it's like, who cares? Vignette's like, we're here, we're alive, there are people alive and suffering. But it's like, I think it's in the regards of all those souls that were lost because of something you end up doing, you're going to be trapped in them. Like, they're going to be hanging on to their pain, their hurt, their regrets into the gloaming. And I think she's saying the same thing is going to happen to us. Like, what we do matters, you know? So I don't know also whether Samani's lines of like, oh, life's end, like, but this is just your beginning. I don't know that means like when, if Tourmaline dies, that's not going to be the end, and it's just going to be the beginning of a new journey. It's where things really, really begin for her, especially now that she's acquired the powers of like a Horospex. So I'm curious what Samani meant for that, or is it just being like, no, your journey begins here because you need to be alive, because your life is going to hold so much more weight because of what your journey is in the living, or is it what your journey means when you pass on through the gloaming? I don't know. But yeah, Vignette and Tourmaline are on opposite sides, and even Philo's desperate need to try and drag her back. He's like, fine, if you don't want to even do it for me, do it for Tourmaline. It's like, because for him, it's like, I'm not going to get so caught. I was so caught up in my stuff before, and it got a good cop like Barrick killed. So I'm not even going to worry about that. I'm going to do what I do best. I put bad people away. I put killers away. I catch killers. And that's what I'm going to do this time. Because by doing this, I'm going to save lives. I can do that. I can save and protect the people I love. You know, and it's like, right, if you're not going to do it for me, do it for Tourmaline. But even for them, Vignette's like, I am doing this for her and for you. I'm doing it for everyone I love. This is what I believe is right. This is how I protect the people I love. And Philo's just trying to do the same thing just by stopping this war. So, in fact, the plan is to use Tourmaline to draw, using her new powers to draw the Sparris to them, because it's like, right, you saw in your vision, the Sparrows is going to come after you regardless. And even Tourmaline saying like, right, this, because Vignette was like, no, the Sparrows only comes after people that it believes are trying to stop it. So it's like, right, it's like, oh, I'm kind of playing into because for her, it's like, it's going to come after me regardless, especially because she's made it clear she wants to stop what's coming too. So it was only a matter of time. Maybe we're expediting it, or maybe, it's like, this is where fate and your own personal choices do matter. It's like, she didn't know that, like, oh, like, this isn't just like it was going to come after me regardless. So let me just speed things up because I want to stop all of this. But it's like, oh, I plan to stop it all to begin with. So that my choice of wanting to stop everything is why the Spirits ends up coming after me in my vision. That's why it's coming after me now, because I'm drawing it in. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. Chicken or the egg came first. Was this always going to happen, or does it actually come down to choice? Because choice does matter. Philo even turning to Dombey to get him like a machine gun to fight, which is like, oh, you really think I'm going to do this? Like, right, you want this thing taken care of just as much as I do. Obviously, Darius has his reservation because it's like, right, we're going to be relying on Dombey. We're going to really rely on that racist piece of crap. But especially because Tourmaline's life is in the balance. He didn't want her using more magic. He didn't want her to use herself basically as bait to draw this thing in. He's trying to do everything he can to protect her. He was hoping that Philo wouldn't ask her to do this, but she does it because she sides with him in this regard, of like, we need to stop all of this. We also had the situation with Millworthy. Obviously, things haven't kind of gone the way he necessarily wanted them to, so he ends up going to Imogen and Agreus and God, I keep forgetting home dude's name. It's something with like a V, right? Is it like Vesta or something like that? They're all getting arrested despite the diplomatic situation they're in, because it's like, how much did you know about this attack and stuff? Because now even Imogen's like, right, do we really need to go down this route? And even Agreus is like, right, I'm done hiding my tongue. He's like, I'm just tired of everything. My house is just a few steps away. I'd rather not be opposing on you. But she's like, no, you're not imposing. And it's just, where they currently stand. And for Agreus, it's just like, because she's like, why don't we just let the burg burn? But he's like, you are who you are. You care too much. So despite your issues with this place, you're still not going to let a whole bunch of people suffer. But for her, it's like, yeah, like this place is evil. And when I've seen of it, I've been here long before you lived here, Agreus. Like, this place deserves to burn. But she does want to try and save lives. Despite her complicated relationship with this place, it's like, this place isn't, it has its good, it has its bad, like any place does. Especially for Agreus, he's like, right, you might have your issues with the Burg, but the Burg, I've been to other places in the world, they are so much worse than the Burg. So it's like, this place is still worth saving, because it's like, things could be so much worse. So she's kind of conflicted in what she wants to do in this regard. And so when Millworthy comes around, Imogen's like, right, we can try and talk to New Dawn, sway them to actually aim for peace. And Castor's his name, right? It's not Vester, it's like Castor. Once again, I can never remember home dude's name until it just clicked in my head. Castor's like, okay, I'll give you this sign. This means it's from me. So you're going to have someone be a liaison messenger. And they choose Agreus because he's the only one that could go to the row. And so Imogen and him, like, she's worried because she's like, right, what if you go and you don't come back? She's like, I'm sorry that I cut you. What can I do to heal this? And for him, it's like, I'm sorry I ever made you feel like I was trying to control you. It was never my intention. But he says, you are wrong about the terrible things that I've done, the people I sacrificed along the way. I never forgot for a second, but I did all that not just to kind of fit into society and stuff, but to get my own freedom. I did it all for freedom, which is something Imogen can understand, doing whatever it takes for your freedom. And so he tells her at the end of the day, time heals all wounds, essentially. So maybe that there is a chance for them to find their way back to each other, And for her, it's like, you did what you had to do to survive, and I will be always grateful that you did, because that led to you being in my life. And so please come back. And when he makes it to the row, you can even tell the way the other Fae are looking at him. It's like, why is this guy dressed like that? Like a high society, like a regular human. Like, why is he dressed so well where we're all like dirty and barely making it through? And you can tell like other punks looking at him like that. It's like, once again, he doesn't fit in human society. He kind of doesn't fit into punks because of all that he sacrificed. And he comes across this kid and he asks him for direction, ends up leaving them money. And the person he ends up meeting in a bar was Vignette, because that's, like I said, and I brought it up earlier, the conversation they had. I think it still had an impact on Vignette regardless. And then it turns out the sign Castor left wasn't like a sign of like, oh, you speak for him. It's like, no, it's a sign that Imogen might be backing out of Parliament. Because the point is to try and get Parliament to get the Burg to back down, but it's like the Burg will never do that. They'll never surrender. And so it's just going to be a bloody situation all in fronts, especially because the New Dawn's like, all right, you're not going to bend to our will, then we will kill you. We saw it at Ragusa. So it's like they know firsthand. They've seen the blood and death, because I think even Agreus tried to get that across to like Millworthy and stuff. And they also try to make the point that the Burg will never back down. They will never surrender, which obviously it puts Millworthy in a complicated spot when they tried to send a guy. I guess he was going to follow Agreus to Leonora and kill her, maybe try to cut this off at the head or try to, gauge more what their numbers are. But that was a bust. So, and now both sides of Parliament are like, oh, we'll have to figure something out. Screw all this. We'll go to war then. And it's like, once again, it's like the Burg will be underestimating them just like the Pack did. And we see where the Pack is right now. But then Millworthy was able to spin things. Like, all right, it is an election season coming up. And they both pause. And he's like, don't you want to be able to say that you did everything possible? So they're like, right, I guess we can't, we have to, we have to do, kind of execute every ounce of diplomacy that we can. And it's like, right. So it gave Millworthy some more time to try and figure this all out. But obviously, New Dawn's doing its thing because they cut off Agreus' horn, sent it back to Imogen, like, right, you will relay the message. You will say exactly what we need you to say. Or, like, it's going to be Agreus' head in the box next. So then there's the whole situation of they needed an ingredient for Tourmaline to draw in the Aspharis, so they needed something that belonged to a hair or something, and they ended up getting a tooth because Philo ended up getting it for Berwick's body. And he's telling Dominic, like, right, you want me to say, like, it's my fault? He's like, yes, if I wasn't kind of standing in my own way, then maybe Berwick would still be alive right now. Because maybe then I could have listened to what he was saying, but I was drowning in my own self-doubt and sorrow that I refused to. I was so busy kind of looking out for myself. And it's like, right, this is bigger than me and my complicated issues with who and what I am. So obviously, the other cops were not too receptive of Dombey being like, yo, I'm going to work with whatever critch I have to if it means putting down this bastard that's killing so many people. That's kind of like, I guess it's kind of New Dawn's main weapon because, once again, like, the fact is that a revolution like New Dawn, like, I brought it up, maybe it's because the package just like, hey, we're humans taking on a group that is human and face, so they have the numbers in that regard, but it still doesn't explain, like, how, we still don't know how they straight up beat the pack. I don't know if it is that number situation or does the Aspharis end up doing, like, it is kind of their secret weapon. It is the last of its kind, too. Because I was about to say, it's like, it would even be more poetic if it is the one that Philo met all those years ago, but it's like, no, it's not, because the one he met was a female and this one's a male, and they kind of established that the Aspharis, like, whatever gender they are, that's the only creatures they can disguise themselves as that specific gender of, whatever creature, whether it be like a puck, a human, or whatever. They can only shapeshift in that regard. So Dombey did come through in the end. I was curious to see what was going to happen, considering, like, the Black Raven ended up scorching, like, some of the more radicals that were on his side. Because what's the home dude's name? Thatch. We've been seeing him in the back. Like, he's been in the background throughout the entire series, but it seemed like he was definitely going to be an issue now because he's like, oh, Dombey might have lost his way, but we remember how things are supposed to be. We'll teach those crits, blah, blah, blah. He went to go take a piss, which luckily spared his life, whereas the rest of everyone in that bar was torched, which Vignette wasn't too happy about that because she's like, oh, I'm not a murderer. She's never killed anyone before. I mean, to be fair, you did go super hard after Dumby, but it's like, that's one thing. I guess it's like, there's just innocent people in there. So it's like, I guess it's a little different. Who knows what she thought was going to happen? Like, right, we were going to scare them or like bang them up. It's like, oh, we're going to straight up murder. And once again, you were willing to do it for Dombey, when it came to Ona. But I guess in this regard, with everything going on, maybe she wasn't too keen on that. Like, because maybe it's like, hey, other people that are just in that bar, they're going to die. I'm not going to be a murderer because at least killing the bad people, it's like, yeah, that's retribution. So maybe she sees those a little differently. So, but yeah, she didn't throw any Molotovs. The other two did. That ended up, like I said, he was outside, so she threw one to kind of keep him away, and he saw, I mean, who knows how he's going to interpret that of like, oh, I saw you, Vignette, it's Philo's woman, I know what happened, so I think Thatch is going to end up shooting and potentially killing Vignette, maybe, just because of, what that's going to spark. I have no idea. I don't think he's going to read that situation of, oh, she could have hit me, but she did it to spare me, so, but I'm not, even if that was the case, even if he recognized that, which he's too racist and thick-headed to even recognize that, so it has to be a thing of, regardless of it all, I know who you are, I saw your face, I'm coming for you, I'm gunning for you type of thing, so we'll see. When it comes to everything in the row, he's definitely going to be at the forefront of that, and maybe even be enough to sway Dombey in that regard, maybe even get him locked up, because it's like, oh, like what happened, and he'll be like, oh, Dombey like did nothing on the side, so that's why I was kind of surprised when Dombey showed up with the gun. I was like, oh, is that going to be like your burned men that, you just show Philo? But it's like, nope, you rode up with the gun. Maybe he didn't find out about everything because, that happened at night, and maybe it's the next morning, so he hasn't gotten word about it yet. I don't know. Tourmaline's ready and ends up, finding the Spurus, and we finally get the reveal on who it is. And it ends up being Major Veer. And it's like, in the grand scheme of things, it had to be a character we saw from time to time, but I don't think it ever really crossed my mind that it would be Major Veer, because why? He was with the pack. It never crossed my mind. It's like, well, maybe that's also how the Sparrows was able to destroy the pack, because they had an inside person the entire time with the Sparrows. So, and that also, to me, that was my biggest question too, of like, why did the Sparrows spare Millworthy? I was like, not unless I was like, did it kill Millworthy and replace him? But I'm like, no, it wouldn't have been able to do that because Philo and Kane were there. To be fair, they kind of showed up after the massacre, but also, I almost forgot, they saw it fly away, so it definitely couldn't be Millworthy. But I think that's why it spared Millworthy, because as Major Veer, because he's the one that's like, oh, I know who you are. You're like, the fact that you're going so above and beyond for the row, he kept pushing a lot of that early on, being like, oh, I know where your heart stands. Like, you're more pro-Fae than you try to put on. So there's that. I think that plays a role in why, because it's like, right, you knew you could use him in the end, but also you recognized the good person that he was, or at least that he's someone that could be persuaded to slide more towards New Dawn's perspective and things. So maybe that's why you also kept him alive, or very least you felt like he was the person that would be the most amendable, I guess, in the grand scheme of things. So, but I think that makes sense with Major Veer being the one. So, but the fact is he turns back towards the wagon and looks at its own reflection, because I think it feels Tourmaline looking through its eyes and drawing it in, and it's like kind of almost, you stare into the abyss stares back type of thing. So this is going to be wild if it is in fact the series finale. Then it's like, how is this all going to play out? How's this all going to wrap up? I don't see this being a happily ever after completely. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.